Thank you. So who's there now? Cynthia? Just you, huh? Call me at home then, would you? 310-318-6572. Yeah, uh-huh. Good, thanks. Well, where'd she go? Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Good. Thank you. Well, this is definitely the last class of this session. It's taken us 11 weeks to do this, and we've only done 7 chapters out of the 8, but that's all right. We'll start with chapter 8, which is just a review anyway, and then we'll start up again in September. We're currently in the chapter called Practical Mysticism. We're really 2/3 of the way through it, so we may have a short session tonight. But we do want to hit these last 3 points. The first one is spiritual healing, which maybe then we will on for several classes later on in the fall. So let's start right in.
Spiritual healing. Another primary motive for seeking spiritual consciousness is spiritual healing, as distinct from mental or medical healing, of course. Joel says that spiritual healing is the revelation that there is no power in human belief. That's so very clear. Spiritual healing reveals that what we were looking at was, in fact, simply the outpicturing of human belief, and that there was nothing sustaining it, no law or power behind it. Every spiritual healing demonstrates the truth of this teaching.
We've talked about what is being eternally perfect and harmonious, about what is being the only power, about what appears to be as the outpicturing in mind of a consciousness that's filled with human beliefs, and about the fact that beliefs have no power except for acceptance. Spiritual healing reveals that it's all true. When the appearance of flu, let's say, is replaced with the appearance of wellness, with no material or mental intervention, we have our proof.
The fundamental truth which spiritual healing is based on is that there's nothing to heal. If there's an unharmonious appearance in mind, it's just hypnosis. If someone with such an appearance goes to a practitioner for healing, he is thereby aligning his consciousness with the consciousness of the practitioner. If the practitioner is realizing the presence of what is, the one reaching out will be lifted above human consciousness, and the appearance will change to conform to his new consciousness. The disharmony dissolves, and we say that he or she is healed.
Did we get that? Did everybody think on what spiritual healing is? The primary reason I think that or at least one of the primary reasons that Joel, or probably the secondary reason that Joel was so involved in healing was that it's a great carrot. It brings people into the message because it does demonstrate, you know, those four things that were mentioned in the previous paragraph. It does demonstrate that the appearance of disharmony is purely hypnosis. There's nothing sustaining it because it can just disappear. Because you call somebody 10,000 miles away, you know, it really demonstrates that this teaching is true. You know, before Joel died, he had probably 70,000 students around the world who were taking and signing up for the Infinite Way letters, and not to mention people that were buying the books that he didn't know about, but that were taking the monthly letters and attending the classes, and they toured around the world every year, you know, giving classes in 5 different continents. And you know, there's no way that many people would have come to Joel if he hadn't been the most amazing healer since Jesus. You know, I mean, that was the carrot, and that was what brought him in. And out of that crowd, you know, few would stay to learn the principles. It's like the 1,000, 1 in 1,000, and 1 in 1,000 thing again. Out of the 400 that came to the open lecture, you know, 70 or 80 would stay for the closed class, and out of the 70 or 80 that stayed for the closed class, 2 or 3 would stay for advanced work, and out of a bunch of those, well, one of them would become a personal student, so it was the same thing again. But the fact that 70,000 people became Infinite Way students indicates that it worked. So I say it's the secondary reason for it, because I think it was mentioned earlier, the primary reason for healing is for the benefit of the one who's practicing spiritual healing, because it allows them to practice, and that's what lifts them into the consciousness.
We are watching a show on Sufi mystics, and where do they fall in? I mean, the whole like song and dance was like sticking knives in the head, and swords through the chest, and needles, and there was like no blood and no scar. And
I don't know much about Sufis or about the yogic practices. I have no idea. It's probably mental. You know, most of the yoga practices in India are very advanced mental practices, but
well, it was the people in the presence of the Sufi mystic.
we're doing that.
The Sufi was just sitting there, and it was any of the participants as if like they were coming for spiritual healing, but they instead, you know, demonstrating that they can't.
Well, there's a lot of people that really need to show off spiritually. I'm told a story about I can't think of the name of the guru that was so involved in the sheep work here in the Siddha yoga work here in Santa Monica even. But there's a great story about it. Yeah, there's a thing called kriyas that people have sometimes when they're in that presence. You know, there's kriyas, and it means that the energy in your body is releasing. You know, and sometimes it causes jerking and twitching and all sorts of stuff like that. And he would come into the room and he'd sit there for a couple of minutes. And everybody would start twitching, you know, and one day he just walked through it and started kicking out the ones that were faking it, because of course he knew it, you know, just cleared out the whole room, because everybody felt like they were supposed to have kriyas if they were in his presence. So yeah, I don't know what that stuff is, but it's purely mental. It's got nothing to do with what we're talking about. And I don't know whether he was that high or what, but certainly being in the presence of a very high person can release a lot of energy and do a lot of strange things physically, which that's distinct from what we're talking about here.
Healing depends primarily on the height to which practitioners can lift themselves, and often that is a reflection of how long they've been practicing. Over the years, as we get more and quicker results, we believe a little more, but usually it takes several years to fully assimilate the principles. It secondarily depends on how available the supplicants are to being lifted. If clients are rigidly clinging to whatever belief it is that is manifesting as their disharmony, then they probably won't have spiritual healing. Joel always stayed with the person for as long as the person stayed with him. And usually he was eventually able to break down the concepts because Joel is a very high-level practitioner. But even Joel only healed 80 to 85%.
So that was all I thought to say about healing in this, at this level, just because, and I think the next level is a full class just on healing, or maybe 2 or 3 classes on healing where we can talk about the principles. It would be very nice if we develop some, successful practitioners in this community, because that would be a demonstration. We could use that. So I'm hoping that we spend some time there, and that some people, it turns out that some people are led that way.
There's the guy on 2nd Street and PCH. But I've heard about it. I've never met him.
There are lots of healers around, spiritual healers of one level or another. There are plenty of old Infinite Way teachers around that heal. And there are, certainly Barbara was an amazing healer, and Tony Pitzel is a healer, and Doris Crawford's a healer, and Virginia Stevenson's a healer, and I suspect John, her son, is, and John Brewery over here in Santa Monica is a practitioner. I don't know what level of success he has or doesn't have, but he certainly is a practitioner. So there are a lot of them around. But it's all hearsay, isn't it? That's all hearsay. We need the demonstration. If we're going to take this work up another level, we need reliable demonstration.
I remember you saying that even out of people that are enlightened, very few are called that that's supposed to be about healing. But I know that how I relate to it personally is I feel like every day I see all these appearances of lack or appearances of disharmony or whatever. And my job is to know the truth of them.
Mm-hmm.
And which relates to healing, but what I'm aware of is that the work for me is to always work on my own perception.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what healing is. Healing is correcting what you're seeing, you the healer is seeing. If you think you're fixing your client, then you already lost the ball game, because that means you think there's something wrong. Now, Joel points out that out of all the people that are, out of the 1,000 mystics that we could probably find records of, very, very few of them that were ever healers. Because the healing consciousness doesn't necessarily, the understanding of healing principles doesn't necessarily come with enlightenment. And that's real clear. There are an awful lot of mystics and gurus who don't heal, and there are other mystics and gurus who just couldn't care less about it. Who are so aware that it's all an illusion, that it's be like you have a bad dream and get up the next morning and decide to do something about your nightmare. To a lot of really clear gurus, that doesn't play. Or even if you're in the dream, if you're aware that you're in the dream, you're probably not going to try to clean up the dream. All you're going to do is wake up, right? I think the primary reason Joel was one of the weird cases. Joel had his experience, and the next day he was a healer. And he didn't know it. He didn't know why he was a healer or how that happened, but suddenly people were coming to him for healings. People knew it and came to him for healings, and they were getting healings, And he was smart enough or whatever enough that he realized that if he didn't learn what the principles were behind that, that he would eventually lose it. That probably wouldn't continue. But he actually had the enlightenment experience, and he was a healer, and he didn't even know about meditation yet. It was like 6 or 8 months later that he was told meditating is the way to find out about this stuff. So so go figure. Who knows about the sequence? Mm-hmm. Jesus was certainly a great healer, and Buddha, by the way, probably had a bigger healing practice than Jesus did. Another amazing healing practice, and he lived for 50 years, so that was he set up network of ashrams all over India that were healing places. So a few of the really high ones had healing consciousness and knew how to apply it. And Jesus obviously knew what it was about because we could hear it in self-recorded in the New Testament. And Joel was of that kind of a height. You know, Joel was amazingly high. We tend to think that he can't be high like that, but realistically, Jesus taught for 3 years, and Joel taught for 20. And Jesus healed, I don't know how many people in the 3 years, but Joel healed typically 100 to 125 or 130 a day for 20 years. So, do the math. Probably Joel's healing ministry was the greatest healing ministry that ever happened, just because people could call him from 10,000 miles away and get healed. So it's there, and it can happen, and it will be interesting. I'm very interested to see where we go with that. Yeah.
But it seems there's a healing everywhere. So I was healed in here. I mean, because I was depressed, and I don't mean my alcoholism or any of that crap. I'm talking clinical depression. None. And that was just, in this consciousness.
Yeah, we get lifted here, and things disappear, and people do get healings around here. That does happen, but... Huh?
Would that make you a healer?
Sometimes I am, and equally often I'm not. I don't have a track record like Joel. Yeah, some people, Dulcie always gets an immediate healing when she calls me. But then Dulcie brings Dulcie's consciousness to it. She just needs a nudge. Other people don't. Other people go on for a long time and don't show much result, and I don't know what that's about. I'm very inconsistent. People get healings. People get lifted coming around here. And it may look like a healing. The other thing is that people nowadays don't really believe in spiritual healing like they did when Christian Science was such a big church, and there were... there's the occasional religious science church around now that's sort of quiet, but there used to be, 3,000 Christian Science churches and 15,000 practitioners, and it used to be a really big thing, and people were more aware of it, so there's a lot more confidence in it, and the subject can certainly prevent it. Anyway, we'll probably spend... I think we're going to be led, after we do some other groundwork, to spend some time in this particular area and see what happens, see who's led to do what. All right, let's move on.
Protective work. Joe talked a lot about daily protective work. Protective work is not protecting ourselves against any power. For example, we don't do protective work to keep the flu virus from making us sick. Protective work is the exercise of lifting ourselves in consciousness every morning, perhaps many times a day, to the altitude where we know that viruses or anything else have no power. We don't stay well by protecting ourselves from germs. We stay well by protecting ourselves from the human belief that germs have power. Remember, lies have no power except when they are accepted. We practice protective work by starting...
I was just going to say, and that is a lot of work.
What?
Well, because you talk all the time about the 6 billion out there that are broadcasting, and I was just thinking, being a school teacher every year when I start, the deluges of all of the people that tell you that you're going to get sick because you're a teacher.
Yeah.
And that consciousness is just... And so I was just thinking that this is really important work, and not believing in what you are constantly hearing.
It takes conscious work. Joel said that he never went a day without starting it with protective work. Now, Joel is the highest consciousness we've had in a couple of millennia, and he did protective work every day. There is one mind, and there is one consciousness, and there are 6 billion people that believe the flu season is coming, okay? So, left alone, you are a statistic, okay? And with protective work, there's no need to flu. who has, Joel and all the infinite wave practitioners and religious science practitioners and all these people demonstrate over and over again that the flu virus has no power when confronted with a higher consciousness that knows it has no power. That gets, it's been demonstrated, hundreds of thousands of times by now that there is no power, no real power in the flu virus. There's the hypnosis that the flu virus has power. So
no, I was talking about the 6 billion. And what about this? I was in Palm Springs for 4 days, and when doing my morning meditation / protective work there, and other little meditations throughout the day, it was just instantaneous. I mean, I just went right into the silence or feeling the consciousness, and it was real easy. And then I came back here, and it's just sluggish and slow and judging. I can feel that there's more people here, or what exactly is that?
Well, that's part of it. When you go away, I go up to Big Bear, and it's higher than Big Bear, not just altitude. Yeah, all these things appear to work based on distance. It feels like the power of the guru is closer when you're close to the guru. It can't be true because it's just the one consciousness. But in the human world, forces diminishes the square of the distance. Gravity does, and light does, and everything does. If you're 1 foot away, you get one certain amount of power. If you're 2 feet away, you get a fourth of that. If you're 3 feet away, you get a ninth of it. So the physical law, which is invariably these physical laws that are correct, are reflections of spiritual law. It appears to be that proximity matters. So if there's, like Hermosa Beach is extremely dense place. But the other thing is that as you practice, it gets easier and easier. You don't hear as much. You really, walls get built.
I've heard you say that Joel would get up quite early and do his meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
So would he consider this kind of separate or a part of the meditation practice and protective work, or do you have a sense of that?
I don't know what he did, but I have a sense that he means specifically doing protective work. Specifically remembering the process that's going on. It's no different than doing healing. Okay? Specifically remembering healing truth, except that you're not applying it to any particular process, not localized or specific. But, you could go through the 3 steps of healing. You could recognize, remember that Joel has 3 basic steps in healing, so your protective work could look like remembering that there's only one power, okay? And that every other power is an illusion. And you could remember that whenever you see the appearance of something, it's not a power. What it is it's the appearance of a power, and it's because it's presented by, because somebody has bought the hypnosis of human consciousness. The 6 billion, if you see something that's apparently disharmonious, then you realize that somebody has been suckered by the 6 billion. They've been bought, relying on human consciousness. And then you remember that, but in fact, human consciousness itself has no power when confronted by one enlightened consciousness. One enlightened consciousness is stronger than the 6 billion, while in the moment of enlightenment. So you remember maybe some basic truths like this and lift yourself to the point that you see, oh yeah, there's no power there. And it gets pretty easy to do, you get to where, and we all can very reasonably expect to see that our rate of sickness become like 20% of what people do, And whether we're able to heal other people or not, we can certainly expect to be well ourselves a great deal more than the average person around us. It happens to me. I never get sick. It just doesn't happen. And I assume that's because of my regular work. So.
Yeah, it seems like now we're touching on that idea
idea of how do I be in the world and engage with people and having conversations with people, and this double talk that goes on where I'm listening to them or not listening to them. I'm knowing truth inside of myself. I'm saying, is that so, or nonsense, or hypnosis, or whatever inside myself.
And you even stop doing that, you know. See, it's not that I do protective work in great depth every morning, although I'm in the consciousness before I start the day every morning. But it's also that I expect to be well, you know. I don't expect that I have to do protective work to keep the flu away. I expect, watch me get struck down.
We'll be bringing chicken soup.
One of the fucking classes over here. But I expect to be well, and I expect to be provided for, and I just expect all that, you know. It can't not be. So it would take a real crash in my consciousness to, you know, to open the window to let that through. And similarly, I hear all the stuff that people are saying about this, that, you know, the stuff you're talking about, and I don't even hear it. You know, it's just background noise. It's like I don't hear the ocean if I don't listen for it. I don't even hear that stuff, you know. It doesn't make a ripple, and I don't have to know that they're wrong, and I don't have to know that it's nonsense, you know, it just... And my own mind's the same way. I don't pay any attention to my mind or anybody else. I just don't hear the words that people are saying. You know, it's just, everything they're saying is just irrelevant.
No. And it sucks to be the one that's talking to you. I said it sucks to be the one talking to you when it's happening.
Are you listening? The conflict, I mean, what I see at times is when I listen to Robert, and Robert says, take your medication, but just be aware that that's not who you are. And I guess he was probably saying it at a level to someone that can only hear that. But,
yeah, if you don't expect to be well, then you'd better take your medication. You know, I mean, it's that kind of a thing. Don't jump over your consciousness.
Right, because it's a very dangerous thing for the religious right. You know, when they say, well, you know, you've got consciousness, don't take your medication, then their child bleeds to death or whatever.
You don't ever hear me say anything like that.
No, I don't hear you saying that, but...
Operate from your own level of consciousness. Know what the truth is and practice it. You know? Yeah.
If I have a belief that if I take this pill, my headache's going to go away, is that mental? Then the headache goes away?
It's material. Material medical works. Mental healing works. I'm not knocking anything, you know. I mean, aspirin works. And so do some mental healers who can heal headaches. And so do some spiritual healers who can heal headaches. You know, it all works. The difference, and the only significant difference, is that if you get a spiritual healing, you have been lifted. If you get a spiritual healing, it's because your consciousness got lifted above the problem, okay?
Right.
And that's probably a good thing to happen to you once in a while, because you don't quite slip back down as far, and it may astound you and drive you to the work when you notice that your headache went away without the aspirin. So that's the point, but you know, I mean, if somebody's just calling to get their headache lifted, and you give them a headache lifting, and they say thank you and send you $10, you haven't done them any favors, you haven't done anything, you know, they might as well buy aspirin. It's cheaper than your aspirin for like a tablet probably or less.
Right, you're going to have to take it out one next time I have a headache. This will be lifted.
Well, that's what I was, is there a process to you, because I know another guy that hasn't been sick in 20 years. Was there a process for you, I mean, where you were getting sick and quit getting sick? Or did you just stop getting sick? Because I've just got worse.
I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it is I stopped going to doctors. I don't go to places where... Now, I don't go into doctor consciousness. I don't go for my yearly checkup because I am not willing to go into a office where people know that I'm a statistic and they're looking for something wrong. Yeah, I mean, they'll find it if they look long enough. But, yeah, I don't do that kind of thing. I get my teeth cleaned because they get scuzzy, but I don't let them x-ray my teeth, you know. We need to x-ray your teeth. We haven't x-rayed your teeth in 5 years. I know, and they're fine. Well, what if something's wrong? I said, I'll know it. I'll know if something's wrong. You know, there's nothing wrong with my teeth. So I refuse to encourage people to examine my body looking for something wrong. You know, I don't need to be in that consciousness. I don't buy in fact, I go to the dentist's office to get my teeth cleaned before the dentist gets there. I'm gone before he gets there. I don't want to be there when, you know, in the consciousness of people who believe authoritatively in disease. Why would I? And I'm not saying you should all stop going to the doctor. I'm just telling you what works for me. I haven't seen a doctor since, I guess I saw a doctor in 1986. That was the last time I saw a doctor. That was a case of appendicitis. Seemed like a good plan at the time. And I didn't have a doctor. I went to the emergency hospital, and we got whoever's there, you know, some guy, I have no idea who he is, says, well, you're displaying 9 of the 10 standard symptoms for acute appendicitis. And I said, yeah. And he said, we should operate. I said, yeah. He says, who's your doctor? I said, I don't have one. He said, oh, okay. And he said, well, there's a theater available here in 45 minutes. I said, good, let's do it, you know. And 2 hours later, I was done, and the next morning I was out of there, you know. I mean, it's just, I don't know what it was about, but it was, that was the last time I saw it. I went back a week later, and he said, wow, that's really healed. When did this happen? I just didn't believe it. Only a week. That was the last time I saw a doctor. And I think my health has a lot to do with not being a doctor. It's all consciousness. It's all what you expect.
Wouldn't you advise somebody, because what usually comes up for me is if there is some appearance of something, I go to work on it spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
I want to address it spiritually. I don't want to address the problem below the problem. So I'm going to go into meditation. I'm going to practice my own truth. I'm going to call to get lifted. I'm going to do all these things. And if for some reason something else was indicated to me after that point, then whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm going to first, like you said last week, sit down right where you are and say, what is it in me that's blocking me from my joy?
Absolutely. For people that are doing this work, if you're working on your consciousness, work on your consciousness, you know. Try it. Call for help. Get lifted, you know. Give somebody the benefit of being able to practice on you, you know. I mean, if you call somebody every day, then they get to specifically go high enough immediately after the call that they know the truth. And whether it helps you or not, it helps them. And it might lift you too. And, you know, it certainly won't hurt you. Undoubtedly will lift you to some extent. So why wouldn't you do that if you're working on your consciousness? I mean, why wouldn't you approach everything spiritually? But if you're still in script and you're still in kid, your kid's scared to death, then maybe you ought to take it to a doctor, you know, or maybe you ought to do whatever you need to do, you know. The other advantage I have is that I'm script and kid free. And that may have a lot to do with how well I am, you know? I mean, I don't have script and kid going on in me all the time, so I don't have anybody that's in there afraid. It's, you know, I think fear probably is a good source of cancer. Yeah, there's no stress and there's no conflict going on inside of you, so that's probably another good reason for generally being well.
So when I got pneumonia, and like now I'm going deaf in this ear, that's just kid. Or like you.
That's just hypnotism.
I'm not a chance.
It's just hypnotism. I don't know whether it's kid or I don't know whether it's specifically your kid or whether it's just universal human consciousness sucking you in, but it is hypnotism. It's not true. That must be clear. It can't possibly. It's inconceivable.
For my body doesn't exist.
It's inconceivable. But even if you're, I mean, even while you're wearing that thing called the body, it's still, its basic nature could reflect harmony. go on. And then you come back and finish. Where are we?
We practice protective work by starting each day, perhaps while still in bed, with a 1 or 2 minute remembering of truth, that there is only one power, that anything other than what is impotent, that nothing can cause disharmony. And during the day when somebody says, are you going to get the flu vaccine? We say to them no, and to ourselves, because I don't need to, because the flu vaccine has no power, and neither does the flu germ itself. Every time we're tempted to believe that something other than what is has power, we remind ourselves that that's not true. Work is daily because the 6 billion are transmitting, and we are receiving their false beliefs 24/7, and we will become re-hypnotized if we don't take positive action.
Yep, that's the point. Get in the habit of, if you walk out the door without making contact, if you've done enough practice that you can make contact in a reasonable length of time, and you walk out the door in the morning without having to make contact, that would be incredible to me.
I remember about 5 years ago, I never get flu vaccinations, but I remember they were having them free at our gym. And so everybody was doing it, and I thought, well, what the heck, I'll just go get a flu vaccination. It sounds like a good thing, and I got so sick. And I called you, and you said, well, of course, you just said there was flu by getting a vaccination against it. So that was the other side of that. It was amazing, because I'd never had it before, the flu, so I got the vaccination. This is kind of an interesting.
And of course, you'll take the flu vaccination, and what you'll do is catch a little bit of flu from the flu vaccination. And then a month later, you'll catch a regular case of flu, because now you're completely into the agreement that flu has power. And because the spectrum of flus that they built the flu vaccine against is not the spectrum of flus that come around, because it never is, because they've already guessed what kind of flu is going to come here this fall, because, they have to make 10 billion units of shots, It's just so it's just such nonsense.
I kind of get that it's nonsense. But why is it more disharmonious to have the appearance of the flu than anything else, like having the appearance of being, a white guy who lives in Torrance, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you tell me. Are you more comfortable being a white guy living in Torrance, or a white guy living in Torrance that has the flu?
Just white guy in Torrance, no flu.
Yeah. So it's more harmonious, isn't it?
Yes,
That's all. This is not. That's why.
just preferable.
Yeah, more harmonious. Mm-hmm.
But it's all God, isn't the, I understand what you're saying.
Sure.
It's all God, isn't the flu God or too?
Why couldn't you just be in the, whatever this is, the white guy in Torrance who's in the Leelaa, getting the flu?
You can. Robert certainly was absolutely disinterested in the fact that his body had Parkinson's disease. It was not unharmonious to him at all. Because he didn't have a body. Robert always knew that he didn't have a body. That body had nothing to do with not him. And so that did not represent disharmony to him.
So you can have the flu, but you can't be the white guy at Torrance at the same time.
If you think you have a body, if you think that's your body, you'll probably be more comfortable without flu. And in the process of developing your consciousness to where you don't have flu, you may be well on the way to developing your consciousness to the point where you also recognize that you don't have a body. In the right direction.
Oh, yeah, I guess, where I get confused just out, trying to practice this stuff is, it's easy for me to get caught up in thinking that what I prefer is good. What I think is going to be good is good. You know what I mean?
There's no way that you can tell spiritual healing what results you want. you're going to get lifted and you're going to see harmony. But you may not see what you want. I mean, Joel used to laugh about people that would come to them and say, can you lift me out of my cancer, but don't touch my smoking. I still like my smoking.
Right.
And Joel says, well, gee, I don't know. I don't usually tell God what the healing wants to look like. He doesn't seem to be listening to me particularly, And I don't know what would happen here, He also talks about cases where you go for a healing and nothing seems to happen. And 3 years later, when the person was under X-ray, they discovered that 3 things, that he showed the signs of having been healed from 3 life-threatening and terminal diseases that he never knew he had, because all he was worried about his headache. These other things were getting cured inside of him that he didn't even know he had. But no, you can't direct it. Yeah, whatever needs to be healed the most is what's going to get healed, and you may not be aware that that's a problem. So you certainly, it's not directable. And it's also absolutely true that a healthy body is just as much hypnosis as a sick body. But a healthy body reflects, because we apparently have bodies, okay? And we're hypnotized into thinking we have these 5 physical sense body things, okay? That's all hypnosis. Anything that you see through your 5 senses is hypnosis, okay? But that hypnosis can reflect the nature of God, or it can reflect the nature of the cauldron of human consciousness, okay? That's the whole point. And if it's healthy, it's reflecting either statistics, if it's continuously healthy, it's reflecting more the nature of God. And if you're in the statistics, the ping pong game with cold now and now not a cold and this and that and everything, then you're reflecting the nature of human consciousness, which is things change. Things get well and then they get sick and then they get sick.
So the spiritual healing, the actual thing that gets healed is like what in here you call myself, capital S?
You become more aware of the presence. Nothing gets healed because there was nothing wrong. You get lifted in consciousness to where you can see that with respect to this particular detail. Nothing gets fixed. Nothing gets healed.
There's nothing to heal.
That's right. What happens is you get lifted to the point where you see that with respect to this particular situation.
It's just been my experience just doing this work, and I never knew, I came in thinking that I knew what I wanted, but what I never had touched on was that harmony, that I've kind of gotten it. And I think of that as my spiritual healing, because, that integration and feeling of harmony, and I never knew that's what it was. So when he said, you don't know how you're going to be healed, that's the gift.
Well, I see lots of people who get healings that they don't, they call for healings and get healings and they don't know they've been healed. Because what happens is their life changes or something, some perfectly mechanical, ordinary, everyday physical thing happens, that resolves the problem. Shortly after the call. And I think, well, that's a nice way for it to work, is that there will be something that, often there will be something that makes, with respect to healing, typically that's not the way it works, but with respect to finances or something like that, there's usually a storyline that explains why your finances suddenly flourished. A Brinks truck driving by and losing a money bag or something like that. There's always a storyline. Like the old Eskimo story.
Yeah.
Or the helicopter story,
Well, when I did the AA steps, I stopped getting migraines and my ulcers went away and stuff.
AA is a healer, however. AA is a healer. There's no question about it. AA is a healing consciousness. Very specific with respect to alcoholism and addictions, apparently. And notice it doesn't work for food addictions. Absolutely no difference between alcohol addiction and food addiction. It's all hypnosis. There's no difference. I mean, there's different physiological stories, but AA works for alcoholism. It's a healing. No question about it. People have a moment of clarity. Here, listen to the story. They have a moment of clarity, uplifted consciousness, and the desire, the compulsion to drink leaves them. That's a spiritual healing. Okay? Now, you get to keep it or not? Well, if you stay in the consciousness, the chances are pretty good. But if you get well and go back to work and stop going where the consciousness is, why, slips start happening, you know? But there's just no question that AA is probably the best universal source of specific healing that's available.
So from what you've been talking about, to have a spiritual healing, even if you ask for it, you really need to have no concepts about what that's going to look like.
Right.
That actually would serve as a block.
And ideally, Joel says the easiest things to heal are pets. Okay? Because they have no resistance, you know. He says they don't have any resistance, and he says they don't have any blocks, and they don't have any problem at all. So if somebody has a sick dog and they call Joel, they'll just laugh, you know, and the dog gets well. And he says, by the way, he says, notice about that dog, he says, I don't tell it to read 10 pages of practicing the presence, and I don't tell it to listen to a tape, and I don't tell it, shape up its attitude, and I don't tell it to love its mother, and I don't tell it to quick sniffing butts, you know. He said, I just know the truth, and the dog gets well, because it's not thinking either, you know. So, the fact is that ideally, you would just you would ask for a healing and turn it over and get on about your business. And if you have a kid that's doing that, then you need to do kid work sometimes, because the kid that's doing that will continue to do that. You know, this work and script and kid are all three necessary to achieve the type of consciousness we're trying to achieve. Because kids will pull you out, and script will pull you out quicker than hell. Kids clearly can keep people sick.
One day he said to me, I said, well, I'm just going to go to the North Pole. And he said, well, show him then a polar bear would do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's obvious it's not where I go.
It's your consciousness.
Right.
It's what you believe. If you could go to the North Pole and leave your mind here, then it would work. But if you could do that, then you just go back home. Come up here and leave your mind and go back home, you know, and start a trip.
And because I get a kid, and because I did get pneumonia during a family reunion, which makes sense. Like, I can't stand these people, so I'll just get sick and
Yep.
And it's being in the consciousness. I mean, it's taken a whole new understanding for me recently, because I can't have these conversations anywhere else. And it's very difficult to have this conversation without under script read, except here.
That's right.
Yeah, don't go telling your family that you don't go to doctors.
You heard that one?
Oh, yeah. They think you're insane.
Yeah.
They think that you have a moral responsibility to go to doctors to maintain your health.
And they'll get very concerned about you and do all their do-gooder and their rescuer and all their scripts and all their resistance behavior. Yeah, I don't. That's why the principle of secrecy was run over that so carefully a week or two ago. I don't talk to anybody beyond this group about my health issues or my supply issues or anything like that at all. You know, I do not talk about the fact that I haven't seen a doctor since 1986 in an AA meeting. None of their business. If somebody says, when was the last time you were sick? I answer the question. Yeah, I can't remember. Which is an honest answer. And they think, well, gosh, it must have been several months. And I think, no, I really can't remember. You know? think it was when I came back from India.
Yeah, I was laughing about that up above. I was thinking about that. We said during the day when somebody asks, are you going to get flu vaccine, we say to them no, and to ourselves. Because if you said to them, because I don't need to, because the flu vaccine has no power, neither does the flu germ itself, you get the whole...
Then you just read their script and you're about to get rid of that, so you dummy, don't you know the script, the flu has no power?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Now, you get the deal about secrecy. Get the deal. I don't ever talk about myself at all out there. I don't talk about what the work is that's going on here. I don't invite people to come here and do the work. I don't tell people that we have medication on Wednesday night, you know. I've yet to invite anybody to medication in this place, you know. And I certainly don't tell anybody what I think or what I believe or how sick or well I am or how my supply is working or anything like that, you know. I was very afraid yesterday morning because I got nailed at the morning meeting and I found myself saying something that what I said was that, not yesterday morning, but last week one day, because it's what I was thinking about instead of listening to the meeting, you know. And they called me in and I said, I was just realizing that I am now always in the now. I never am in the past and I'm never in the future. I don't think about the future at all. I don't think about my past at all. I'm always right here now. And I was just thinking how wonderfully comfortable I am sitting here right now in the middle of this meeting, you know. And I wondered if I was going to get bit on that. But most people in AA take care of my occasional slips like that by their assumption that anybody that thinks they're happy all the time is obviously in denial, or and I always let them go that way if they want to. Let's do practice.
None of this information will have any effect unless we practice it. Knowing these truths has no power. Practicing develops the consciousness. Every time we're tempted to worry about unemployment, we remember what is has no unemployment. Every time we're tempted to try some shenanigans in business, we remember that there is no competition. Every time we're tempted to take a vaccine, we remember that germs and viruses have no power. Every time we're tempted, we remember it is not necessary to do anything. Remembering over and over is what builds consciousness.
That used to be one of Barbara's flashcards, by the way. It is not necessary to do anything. Joanne and I played for a couple of years, but this does not require my thinking. You and I played with that too, you know. The thing to remember is I don't need to do anything, you know. That's the practice.
As we practice, we become more deeply aware of truth. Human consciousness will always believe that the flu virus causes flu. But if we continue to remind ourselves over and over that it can't, we become more and more confident of that truth. We know it deeper, not intellectually, spiritually, and this deepening results in less flu, fewer colds, and fewer disharmonies in our life.
See, it just happens. It's not because we're looking for harmony. It's because we're looking to know truth, and knowing the truth reflects as harmony. It's not that I've decided I want to be harmonious rather than unharmonious, or well rather than sick, or rich rather than poor, or blah blah rather than blah blah. You know, we don't make those decisions. What we do is make the decision to know the truth. And it reflects as needs being met, and health and harmony and healthy relationships and stuff like that.
Well, I've noticed, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's their consciousness, I've just noticed as long as you and I have been working on healing and these principles, it seems my children don't get sick anymore either. And is that just because the consciousness in the household is lifted?
Sure. Yeah.
Mother is the name of God.
It will happen less as they move away. I mean, eventually, kids up to 12 or 14 are pretty much completely under your consciousness, and then as they get older, you know, when they go through, well, you know when they go independent.
Yeah.
You know when your kids go independent, you know.
But then they come back, and it all starts over again.
Yeah. But the fact is that they have a different conditioning as a result of being brought up in that household than other people have that are brought up in a household that's sickly or afraid of sickness or fear or whatever, you know. The fact is that they've been conditioned better.
So if you lived in, I'm trying to think, if I live in a household with my children, if I lived in a household with my parents, even though they don't do this work, might it change them? Does that make sense?
To the extent that they're available to let it in, it certainly can. It certainly will. Mm-hmm. I mean, people get healed. Yeah, I forget where the story was, but there was a story about a guy that went into a hospital to heal his friend who was in the hospital, and the whole goddamn ward got healed. Whoops. Cleared out the ward. It was a cancer ward, I think it was, or a polio ward or something. Cleared out the ward, And he was working, he came to do his friend work, So it's just the consciousness, and people that are ready to get lifted will, and if somebody is bound and determined not to, there's no way you can lift them. Joel was 80 or 85% successful, but there was always that 15% that he couldn't touch.
Mm.
Mysticism is completely impractical as far as human consciousness is concerned, but we can see how very practical mysticism is when we attain the experience of living a life entirely by grace, which really means living the life that is truly ours already, experienced in this moment of fulfillment, harmony, and joy that is ours.
Thank you. Well, that's it. Good job, Lee.
Right on time.
Good book.
This just makes me think of my mother. When my daughter is ill, my eldest daughter, my mother won't talk to her on the phone because she says that the viruses that she gets are so powerful that she spoke to her on the phone and has picked it up. And so it's in, because what you're saying, my mother lives in Pennsylvania. It makes sense of everything that you're saying here because she believes that. And so when she talks to her on the phone, she truly believes that she will get that, so therefore she does.
Right. It's good. Buys the hypnosis, huh?
I think my daughter does, so she was going to talk to her. That was kidding.
Medically speaking, it's hard to think how she gets that stuff to go down the a lot of switchboards there. It's amazing it gets to her.
Do you want me to take the vaccine and call her?
That's okay, Mom. I got another friend as well. I'll have him call you after you talk to her. I got a friend that didn't catch it like
I've got a friend who's pretty good.
So bad of me.
No, that's the truth. So protective work, for some reason, is a hard thing to develop the habit of doing. And just like making contact every morning is a hard thing to develop the habit of doing. But it just pays off in spades, It's amazing. And the practice of doing protective work, or the practice of healing, or the practice of lifting yourself, or the practice of saying nonsense whenever you see a disharmony, remembering the truth about it, or just the practice of remembering to meditate for 10 seconds, 20 times a day, all of those are building your own consciousness, lifting yourself. It's all about getting high. You people will be able to sign up on that.
You should name your next class that.
Getting high?
100 people on
Right.
the door.
Well, the 8th chapter of this book is a collection of Joel had a paper that I found somewhere that listed the 25 principles of infinite way that he could think of, and I tacked on to them 4 principles of Roberts and a few other things that, some 30 or 35, 39 principles. And they're just spiritual principles. And we'll start there on September 12th. I'll read the principle and we'll talk about what it means. And we'll read the next one and talk about what it means, because we have enough information from the book to understand what they mean at a level that's meaningful to us. I mean, if we don't have enough experience and practice yet to practice them all, but certainly we will be able to, I think, based on the information we've gotten through going through the book, I think we'll be able to understand what they mean and see that they're just different ways of saying the same thing. So we'll play with those initially. Talking about the reaching for the moon. You guys haven't seen the artwork I've got for reaching for the moon. It's nicer than the pointing at the moon guy. Tired of this fat guru that's pointing at the moon. We're moving on to monkeys. So,
Is this class taped, Lee, as well as the Script and K classes? Yep. And you will continue to do that?
Yeah, we'll put it up on, I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but we'll put it up for people that miss so you can go listen to it. So we'll do that for a week or two, however long it takes to do it, and then I've got a couple more ideas about, I sort of want to go back through this book and, not to read it or anything like that, but I'm going to go back through it and look at it and maybe pull out some particular points, and we'll actually practice them. Maybe we'll do some homework on them. Maybe we'll introduce some flashcards and work on some of these things, and take it from the level of reading it to the level of working with it. And then maybe we want to go through this practical mysticism and spend the night on each of the topics in there, or 2 or 3 in some cases, I don't know, and certainly I'm wide open to anything else people want to suggest, and maybe we'll just see where we're led. That's sort of my plans for the fall. That's enough to get us started. And there weren't enough people to do another version of the pointing at the moon. So there won't be that class. There won't be another class that's reading the book. So I'm going to let them come join this one, let them buy the book and read it first, and then come join us. And I think rather than trying to do the 2 in conjunction, having the pointing and the reaching, I think what we'll do is maybe we'll work for 2 or 3 months, and then take a break, and then in January we'll do another book study. We'll try to do it in 8 weeks instead of 12, but do another book study. Because those of you who want to do that, I'm sure it'll be totally different next time through there, even though the text hasn't changed that much. I've cleaned it up as a result of the feedback that I've gotten here. But I think we might do a reading back in January. Read it for January and February, and then go wherever we want to for another 4 months. And then if there's interest, do another reading. Because I think every time we read this, it's going to be quite different to us. I think for us, we'll read it at a different level, although new people will read it at the level we just read it at. So it might be fun to do that a couple of times. I don't know. We'll see.
Will you keep them on Mondays?
Yeah, I'd rather meditate on Fridays. Yeah, until there's enough people that want to do something on Friday night, until there's more people than that come here to meditate, why would we keep meditating? So we'll stay on Monday nights. That's a better night for me. I got more important things to do Friday. Yoga and meditation. Yes, we'll do. Yeah, we haven't stopped. We're still doing. We will continue. There's often several people here on Friday nights. Not like it be every meditation. All right, let's get quiet. I think we're done. Thank thanks for all your help getting this book sorted and straightened out and everything. Actually spent quite a bit of time between the last class and this class getting this stuff sorted out. As usual, I've gotten a great deal more out of class than anybody else. But it's just so good for me to be forced to think about this until I can say it reasonably clearly, which is not easy with this stuff. So it's such good practice for me to try to write down in a presentable way what I know. So thank you. Okay, love y'all. Thanks for coming.
I was looking at